Welcome to the Storytime podcast, where we dive deep into the lives of the most influential figures in professional sports and entertainment. I'm Paul Vecchione, and alongside me is my co-host, my partner in crime, and of course, my friend, Steve Costello, coming to you from the Governor's Comedy Club podcast studio. Our friend Tony Walker is over there at the controls. We thank him and everyone at Governor's for their hospitality. We're here to bring you candid conversations that reveal the true stories behind the success, the struggles, and everything in between for sports stars and celebrities. You know, we know that behind the fame and glamour, there's always a backstory because everybody's human. Everybody has their trials and their tribulations. So we're here to bring them to you on the Storytime podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Long Island Prep, who is partnering with schools and communities for substance abuse prevention and mental health awareness. LI Prep's 3 pillars of action is something every school and every community needs to keep their children safe, our children safe in the face of the ongoing drug overdose and mental health crisis. Visit them at longislandprep.org. Mr. Costello, Stephen, my friend, how are you today?
Doing great. We just got with Marty, who was Marty Lyons, who was Paul's teammate. And actually, I guess it was a couple of months back when we were at Night of Inspiration and we're all in the car together. And the real true thing that I think sparked story time is I always wanted to do a book story time because there's so many things that I've experienced, you know, that nobody really knows about in a sense. And, you know, and then I was like, you know, talking to Paul, and first I have to tell, I think the way the show works is first I have to tell a story about Paul and I, which 35 years of friendship. And then there's a couple of things. So there was a few things that Paul had shared that were just literally like unbelievable. They're not in any book. They're not Googleable. It's, you know, like the Marty Lyons thing with Jim Kelly and giving him the business and the goal line stand. Those are all well documented. But I think we learned some things today that just weren't.
Yep.
So I don't know that anybody knows that I had gone to Paul's wedding. And I guess it was, I'm going to have Paul help me with this a little bit. Paul, was your dad like a pastor, or why was it like a dry wedding?
Well, hold on. Can I bring Paul Frase on first?
Yeah.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
We didn't bring you on yet.
No,
Okay.
I gotta. And you know what? Maybe I'll change the syntax.
Right.
No, it was a dry wedding. We'll get back to that.
We'll talk all about. Just give me 1 second here. So we are here with Paul Frase. Paul Frase is 11-year NFL veteran, former New York Jet, Jaguar, Raven, and he went to the Super Bowl with the Green Bay Packers. Paul is an advocate for Myotubular Myopathy research and the co-founder of the Joshua Frase Foundation, mental health coach specializing in brain health and CTE. He is an award-winning author and motivational speaker, and of course, 2-time recipient of the peer-voted Ed Block Courage Award. And, you know, Steve, through you, I've gotten to know Paul very well these last few months. A gentleman on top of all that.
Absolutely. So getting back to the wedding.
Hey, Paul.
Hey, Paul. Getting back to the wedding. I don't know. I think it was pre-cell phone day. What year did you get married? Maybe I had a cell phone.
A long time ago.
A long time ago. So
30 years ago.
Yeah, maybe it was a California number, but I get a call and it's like Ken O'Brien, and he's like, yeah, I need a favor for tomorrow. Are you going to Paul's wedding? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, we need like a couple of bottles of Jack Daniels, a bottle of Absolute. There weren't all these famous cutting edge vodkas back then. It was like, you know, so we did. And we had a couple of drinks. And so was your dad a pastor or?
My dad was a pastor, but my mother-in-law, she didn't drink. And she was paying for the wedding. So,
Wow.
And I was actually going through a time of not drinking myself, probably about 18 months before our wedding. So I didn't mind, but it was hilarious walking through the Burton Mansion room where we had the reception and seeing Bill Bickel and Kyle Clifton putting caps on fifths of vodka and you know, putting it down on the floor between their feet. It was hilarious.
Wow.
Good stuff.
Wow. And really enjoy, I know yesterday you just had your walk on the beach, and a lot of what we're talking about is hope, and a lot of what we're talking about. And we really kind of, through our friendship and the fact that Paul knows you as well, we have a lot of really ground to cover today. And I'm so excited that we're going to have you, you know, here. Most recently, I just want to tell our audience, Paul's book is
Game Changer.
Game Changer is just incredible. I read it one shot. Paul actually drove down to our house, met with Lori and and we talked a little bit about the book. And I think Laura, I think we each read it within a day or so. And just, it's one of those things where him and Allison each write back and forth with a chapter. So you're really reading like two books within one, and the writing style, and it just can't, it definitely, you read that and it takes you, it really gives you a lot to think about.
So Paul, do you want to start there? Why don't you tell us about Game Changer? Tell us about the Joshua Frase Foundation and how this all came to be.
Game Changer was about my son. Was it about our son? Basically, he was born with he was born in 1995. He was one of 55 known cases in the world of myotubular myopathy. Allison was a New Yorker, and she had a lot of chutzpah. I was a New Hampshire kid that never took no for an answer, and was always going to find a way. And Allison said, let's raise a bunch of money for this cause and find out what's going on. We now know there's 5,000 to 8,000 kids out there with it, and we've actually been through clinical trials. This story, Game Changer, is a story about that journey, and it's a story about Joshua. And man, you talk about hope. We were called cowboys from our cohorts from across the pond because we had hope and we were giving people hope. We knew what was going on in preclinical trials, and we knew what could happen in clinical trials, and it did. Some wonderful things have happened in clinical trials. But anyway, it's a great story. It's very impactful. You'll laugh, you'll cry. You'll scratch your head, and I think you'll enjoy it. So I know you'll enjoy it. And Steve, thank you for shouting from rooftops. And yes, you can. We've had probably 3 or 4 people say that they've read it in one sitting, and it's pretty amazing.
Well, getting back to story time, and actually really interesting. But who did you? Here's one thing that came up: is who'd you room with when you were at the Jets?
Oh gosh, Mercereau a few times until Mercereau, that was a treat. But I snored. I was a really bad snorer.
Me too.
And the last few years, nobody would room with me. So
wow,
it was great.
So thinking about the time that you and I talked about is the Jets, and Marty got into, and I've talked to Otis about this too, is I don't think when you first came to the Jets, they were paying out these $200 million contracts. So what was that first contract like, and what did you do with the money?
What money? It was play for the fun of the sport. No, I was a 6th round pick. I was the 9th pick in the 6th round. And when they had 12 rounds, I made minimum wage. I made a signing bonus of $25,000. I bought a Chevrolet Celebrity just in case I did not make the team, and I could hopefully make the payments. And about 15 years ago, when I was talking to a guy that I played with the Jaguars, and he says, "Frase, hey, your stats are good enough where if you were playing today, this is 15 years ago, your second contract would have been $26 million." And I'm like, well, I made 10% of that over 11 years.
Wow. Yeah, it's really, really unbelievable. So you first come to the Jets, and the team, I'm pretty well versed. Back then it was, Gastineau and Klecko, and I'm sure Greg Buttle and O'Brien and those days. So you were really kind of at the cusp of the end of the sack exchange.
Right.
Towards the end, I guess those guys fell off, but
take us through
that a little bit.
Good for me, bad for Gastineau and everybody. But Marty was in his 10th or 11th year when I was sitting next to him, and I was going to make it finally in the training camp, my first training camp. And Klecko had already gone to Indianapolis. And Mark Gastineau was the kid that the guy actually started at left tackle, the great Mark Gastineau. So I got some glimpses of some really cool stuff that happened. I was a New Hampshire kid growing up in New Hampshire. The only thing I knew about professional sports was the Red Sox, the Celtics, and the go Red Sox, by the way.
I feel bad for you then, Paulie. Come on now.
And the Patriots. But I didn't even know what the Sack Exchange was. That's how ignorant I was to this world of the NFL. But man, sitting there and wondering how, scratching your head, wondering how a guy like Marty Lyons has made it through 11 training camps. How is that possible? And all of a sudden, within a blink of an eye, you're into your 9th and 10th training camp. So
you figured it out. Part of story time, and I know we may not have a younger audience, but we will educate people on Mark Gastineau. But a little bit of the story about, I don't know, was it against the Redskins maybe? I'll tee it up for you.
So first of all, I told this story about 6 months ago, and it was to a younger audience, and they're like, "Who is Mark? What are you talking about? Who is Brigitte Nielsen?" Well,
she just had a birthday, I think, yesterday.
Did she? Really quick, yeah, we have to set it up. Mark Gastineau was the Michael Strahan of that day, and Michael Strahan is even older to the point. Who would you say that is a great sack?
Aaron Donald. Let's just say Aaron Donald now.
That's who we're talking about. One of the best ever sackers ever to play. Anyway, we're playing the Washington Redskins in a scrimmage at Lehigh University, and I'm a number 2 defensive line. I was number 7 when we started training camp 7 days earlier, and I climbed all the way up to number 2 behind Mark Gastineau. And we were playing the defending world champion, Super Bowl champions, the Washington Redskins, and all the Hogs, and Joe Jacoby and Grims, and all the Lachey and all those guys were sitting there. And I was fine because I was going to go against number 2. So the scrimmage was set up, the 2s against the 2s, the 1s against the 1s. So our defense starts out there, and Mark Gastineau is the left defensive end. And the first play goes off, and there's just a big, cloud of dust. And I'm watching for the sidelines and getting ready for, 9 plays to pass, and then the offensive plays to pass. And anyway, a limousine at that time comes through the chain link fence, drives right behind our bench, about 20 feet away. And people are trying to watch the scrimmage and then watch the limousine, and then watch the scrimmage, watch the limousine. And Mark is in the huddle. The whole defense is in the huddle. They break the huddle. And Mark, all of the coaches were behind Washington's offense. They were all standing out there watching on the 40-yard line. And Mark Gastineau turns to the head coach and says, "Hey, Joe, I got to go." And I'm like, "You can't. That's Mr. Walton. That's Coach Walton. You can't call him Joe." He takes his helmet off, drops it in the middle of the field, starts walking off the field, takes his shoulder pads off, drops them at Fang, Billy Hampton Sr., his feet. And he jumps on the hood of the limousine, and out gets this redhead, and then out gets Brigitte Nielsen. And Brigitte Nielsen, who would you equate her as an actress? She was just a superstar. She was the former wife of Sylvester Stallone. Anyway,
wow. Mark
says, and I'm my jaw is hitting the ground. I'm on the sidelines, and I see Mark say, "Hey, Gita, come here," and he starts kissing and making out with Brigitte Nielsen in front of the whole Washington Redskins and the New York Jets, all those young rookies. And all of a sudden I hear, "Frase, get your butt out here." And I'm like, no, I'm supposed to play against the 2s. "Frase, get your ass out here." I end up playing against the 1s, the Washington Redskin right tackle who had been in the Super Bowl, 5 months before. And he literally huffs and grunts. And he literally does that. And he looks at me and he says, fresh meat. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
That's fantastic.
So the moral to the story is always be ready to have your number called and know your plays. I ended up playing pretty good in that scrimmage, and it probably helped me make the team that first year. So, yeah,
wow.
that was pretty wild.
I was just gonna say, Paul, but for the whole, for this segment of the Storytime podcast, it's so funny because you obviously have different aspects of your life where you experience different things. So in the NFL, can you bring us to that day when, not that you were overwhelmed or overmatched, but you were like, man, I have some task in front of me, and what was that like for you, and how did you approach it as a man?
Are you talking about the end of the playing days and you knew it was coming?
No, I mean, how about when you were walking
Drafted.
on? Yeah, when you were walking onto the field that first day. Tell us about it.
Well, the first day when you're number 7 and they only keep 2, you kind of figure your time is numbered. But it's like you never give up. You're never going to take the play off. I was one of those motor guys. I wasn't a superstar athletically or a superstar, but I wasn't a white collar player as you would think, but my motor was running. And actually Dr. Z Zimmerman, was that who? Yeah, he actually wrote an article. I was in the article in Sports Illustrated the week before the draft, and actually he called me and one of the running backs, it might be Thurman Thomas, the most underrated players in the draft. And that was pretty shocking seeing something like that. But always in the back of your mind, okay, if I've made it this far and I got drafted, there's always a chance, and I'm going to bust my butt. And I'm going to do everything I can and take advantage of everything I need to give myself the opportunity to make the team. And timing is everything in the NFL, and staying healthy and playing when your number is called. Klecko was already gone. Abdul Salam had been gone 10 years or 5-6 years. And Gastineau, although he was still running a 4.7, he had played 9, 10, 11 years. And It was time. The timing was, hey, we need a new kid to come in and bolster it up. I was never a great pass rusher, but I had the most tackles on the defensive line in my second year, so I could defend the run. So I knew I had a shot.
You also were a baseball player. I think you were a pitcher. How tall are you?
I'm 6'5".
So were you like a Randy Johnson type in high school, or?
No, he was like 6'10". No, this is the God's honest truth. I played in Little League, and then I played in Junior Babe Ruth, and then I played in Senior Babe Ruth like 4 times. And I didn't have glasses, and I needed glasses, and I went 0 for 14 in one of my Senior Babe Ruth seasons. And I had to get glasses in order to get my driver's license. And the first time up, I hit a triple with my glasses.
Wow.
But the pitching, I only threw heat, probably a whopping 62 miles an hour, maybe. But I got brave, and I tried a curveball in Senior Babe Ruth. And the umpire actually, this is the umpire's inflection in his voice. Right. The umpire was shocked that I threw a strike. And so Roland Breton, our catcher, my catcher, he was actually taller than me in 6th grade. We were basketball co-captains of the basketball team. But now he's about 5'8", I think. But anyway, he says, "Hey, throw another curve." And my second curve and my last curveball ever attempted in Senior Babe Ruth went behind the batter. So
that was it for you with the baseball, then, right, Paul?
That was it. I took my glasses off, and I kicked some dirt.
So 10 years with the 10 years with the Jets. Is that accurate?
I was 7 years of the Jets.
Okay.
Two with Jacksonville, one with Green Bay, and one with Baltimore.
Okay, so you leave the Jets and you leave, I guess, a little bit of the cold weather, and you go to Jacksonville. What was that transition like? And I think, also around that time you had been dealing with other things. So,
Yeah.
what was that? Try to help our audience out with what was all of that.
So I had Allison and I got married in 92, October 16th of 92, and Joshua was born February 2nd, 1995. I was with the Jets through the season of 94, and I was left unprotected for the expansion draft for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And while we're in the hospital in Dallas, Texas, during the off season when I was still a New York Jet, I got drafted to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and there was no way. Basically, it was just a whirlwind. Tom Coughlin was a very, very, very strict coach, and he wanted us all there for an off-season workout program, voluntary, mandatory, and if you're blue collar, you better be there. And I was always blue collar, so I had to go. So I think it was probably 10 or 12 days after Joshua came home from the hospital, I actually had to start commuting back and forth from Dallas, Texas to Jacksonville. That was a hard time, because I knew my son was hanging on for his life by just a thread. And it was I had 8 years under my belt. We had a few dollars, even with the minimum wage, being $55,000, my first few years in playing days, we had a few dollars saved, but we knew we needed insurance. So Allison and I decided that I was going to go for it and keep playing. This is Tom Coughlin just got everything he could out of us. I went into his office, and I said, Coach, during it was March. He made us come in March 8th, and I said, Coach, I'm going to give you everything I got, but my son is fighting for his life, and I'm going to be back and forth. I'm going to commute. Monday through Friday, I'll be here. And he says, well, just make sure you give me everything you got when you're here. And I had a long hair in my Jets days. I had literally hair down to my back, and I had a big beard. And Bill Pickell used to bust my chops and call me the Nazarene. And Tom Coughlin gets up after that talk, and he pats me on the shoulder. He says, a Syracuse boy, huh? And Tom went to Syracuse, of course. And I said, yeah. He says, well, you need to see about a haircut and a shave. And he starts laughing. And he doesn't acknowledge I exist for the next 2 weeks. He won't even look at me walking down the hall. So I cut my hair, and he looks at me, and the next day he says, well, that's a start. And until I cut my beard, I was fearing for my football life. But anyway, sorry, I got off track.
No, not at all. No, this is story time.
Yeah.
Story time, yeah.
And
so
go ahead,
Paul. Tell us about what it's like to play in the Super Bowl. What is it like to sack Brett Favre? I mean, tell us about those days.
Well, so I'll get back to your Super Bowl question in a minute, because it's really salt in the wounds. But
sorry about that.
I never hit Favre, but I did sack Marino.
Right.
And it was a thrill in my life. It was a year. Do you remember the year that the offensive line for the Dolphins had the fewest sacks ever in the history of the league?
Sure.
It was like 13.
Wasn't a lot.
Counting.
Yep.
Well, I line up in the guard, the left guard. I mean, I'm on the left side of the center. I'm on the guard. And when Marino's barking out his cadence, I literally pick my hand up and moved it about an eighth of an inch to the right towards the inside. And the guard thought I was going to shoot the A gap, and I actually was going to shoot the B gap.
Right.
So the guard was he's so afraid of me shooting the A gap. His left foot stomps down hard. He trips up his center. He falls. I am in the backfield about the same time Marino gets the ball, and I sacked him.
Wow.
So that was
Wow.
Did he say anything to you? Did Dan Marino have any choice words?
No, he was cussing at his offensive lineman.
Well, which kind of leads me into the which story time is. I just found it to be one of the more powerful stories of how you wound up in Green Bay. And I think our audience, I don't think anybody knows that. And, hopefully we'll try not to cry during this, but I think it was really an emotional moment with you and Coach.
Well, it was, so Tom Coughlin was a tough individual. He was a tough coach. And he had me on his team 2 years, and I went through the third training camp with him. And, it's kind of frustrating because he took another 3 years off my life, and he probably knew he was going to ship me off. But he was the day before the final cut. Joshua was in the hospital back in Dallas, Texas, and I had to go. But there was a gap. There was a day off before the final cut, or there was a couple days off, and I said, Coach, what's going on with Joshua. I have to go back to Dallas, and I'm going to be back here Tuesday morning, bright and early. And he says, you make sure you're back here when we're ready to go. And I said, absolutely, Coach. I hop a flight back to Dallas almost immediately, and I'm 15 minutes from the airport. I get a cab, I race home, and I walk in the front door, and within a minute, the phone rings. And Allison answers the phone, and it's Coach Coughlin on the phone.
Wow.
Now, there's no reason that Coach Coughlin would ever call a player the day before the final cut. And he gets me, and hey, Allison, how is Paul there? I literally had just walked in the door, and I said, hey, Coach, how are you doing? And he says, Paul, I wanted you to have the opportunity to win a Super Bowl, and we traded you to Green Bay.
Wow.
And good luck.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, thank you, Coach. I only packed 2 pairs of shorts and 3 T-shirts on the flight. You could have told me 3 hours ago. No, it was. They literally at the Jaguars. Seth Payne was he was a rookie, and I had just went through training camp with him. He was a rookie from Princeton, defensive lineman, and he wanted the number 91. And Bobby Monica, who was the equipment manager for Marino for years and years, he was the Jaguars equipment manager. He gave my number the minute I walked out that locker room. He gave my number to that young freaking rookie, and he had you usually give a 9-year vet the respect of at least a few minutes before you give his jersey away. But it was.
We'll talk to Bobby about that later. Yeah. He's a good friend of mine.
That's great. Let me just take a segment break here. Thank our sponsors of the Storytime podcast. This segment is brought to you by Lori's Ark. At Lori's Ark, where they believe every animal deserves a second chance, their dedicated team rescues and rehabilitates animals in need, providing them with the care and love that they deserve. Join Lori's Ark in making a difference, one life at a time, because every animal deserves a safe and loving home. You just go to lorisark.com for more information, and 5 Star Speakers Bureau, where they connect you with the world's top experts, bringing unparalleled insight and inspiration to all of your events, whether it's a keynote speech, motivation for your employees, golf outings, or other live events. Five Star Speakers Bureau provides leaders in all fields ready to engage and motivate your audience or make your event one to remember. So elevate your event to the next level with Five Star Speakers Bureau, where excellence meets experience. Just go to fivestarspeakersbureau.com for more information. Steve Costello and I are here on the Storytime podcast talking with Paul Frase. Paul, you've got so many great stories, in your coffers here. We can probably talk about it all day. There's so many things that you and I have actually already, gone through. But, one of the things I wanted to give you the opportunity today is to, talk about Joshua, talk about the Joshua Frase Foundation, and what, how that all came to be, and where you guys are at today.
Joshua was, excuse me, just such a blessing. Sometimes we are hit with things, a deck of cards that we just don't understand, a hand of cards that we don't understand, but we need to play and play out. Literally, the doctors told us after 24 days in the NIC unit at the Medical City in Dallas, they literally said, bring your son home. And if he's alive after a year, bring him back and we will reevaluate him. They couldn't tell us what was going on. Wow. And again, you had two mentalities, different mentalities of parents. I was just like, just tell me how to keep my son alive. Just obviously, you're doctors. You've been to school for 18 years. Okay, tell me how to keep my son. They couldn't. And Allison said, basically, Paul, they can't. They don't know. We have to find out. And that was that started us on an odyssey that we found out what he was afflicted with after 5.5 months after a nerve and muscle biopsy. And there was only 3 medical journals, and 2 were from 1967, actually from a doctor in Manhattan. So there was, and they said just awful things like, the death sentence was, 50% of these kids don't see their second birthday. Hmm. And wow, that was just a shock. And it was shocking to Allison too, because she had 4 older brothers and she wanted a large family, and that she had her heart set on it. And but we knew it was genetic, and we knew the probabilities of it happening again, and just on and on and on. But we set out within a year by his, I think before his first birthday, or it was just after his first birthday, we got the paperwork for a 501c3 nonprofit organization called the Joshua Frase Foundation. And Joshua's legacy after 29 years of research. So we started research in 96. Gosh. So 28 years or so. Anyway, it's culminated in some unbelievable miracles. We had a few tragedies, and the tragedies spur us on to find the answers for these kids and eradicate myotubular myopathy from the list of over 10,000 genetic orphan diseases. Wow. It's been an odyssey. It's been a journey. We wouldn't trade it in. Allison frequently says that it's turned her into the woman she is. Joshua had that effect on all of us. Anybody that had the opportunity to meet Joshua and get down and talk with him had that experience. And he was a National Honor Society student. I didn't even know how to qualify for the National Honor Society, and I had to dumb him down. And we found out that the office was playing from the reruns from 9 to 9:30 and 9:30 to 10 o'clock at night. So I made him sit there and watch it with me. We watched it every season, probably 6 times. And he would slap my leg And he would be looking over my legs at the TV, and he would slap my leg, and I say, "Dad, the white shroot is an idiot." What?
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, he got the office at such a young age. I mean, unbelievable.
And his younger sister, who was 6 years younger than him, she's watched every season multiple times, and she can verbatim. She's got one of those mind memory traps. She can verbatim, speak a bunch of episodes. So it was, but the Allison didn't have that type of humor, but her kids did. So.
Well, that's good stuff. And listen, there's so much to, that we could unpack. And I think part of us having a speakers bureau and the podcast, actually during the break, we're like, we should just turn this podcast into a telethon. And there's just, hate to see the guests leave. But one of the things, and I think every time somebody is going to read the book, and I think you're multimedia, and I mean, everything from the walk on the beach yesterday. And, Lori and I watch so many of your things, and there's just so much, so much to it. And now you're working with CTE, and you're working with, former players, concussions. And, so I think, and I would assume my co-host will agree, is Paul should really be like a regular, once in a while.
Well, I'll tell you what, Paul, just having met Steve, and then he introduced me to you right away. Not only is it just a pleasure to speak to you all about, no matter what it is, Paul, and listen, I'm not blowing smoke, although I feel like I should, because you are somebody who kind of helps bring things along in such a great way. I mean, Steve and I talk about you almost every day and how we can loop you into everything we're doing. We're just so thrilled to have you part of this journey. That.
It's absolutely, it's great to be a part of this in some small way. And I'd love to be involved as things develop. Steve, I was writing excerpts from Joshua as young as 6 months old, and I was going to write a book called Letters from a Father. And it was, but eventually I said, no, this has to be written from both parents' perspectives. Joshua's life is powerful, and it has to be shared.
Right.
And you were actually, you had just written your book, and I bought it and read it, and I was like, okay, I need to start tugging on. I used to tug on Steve's collar and say, hey, I need some electronics, please. but yeah, it's mentors, people that are there to guide you and give you just pointers, give you information, share their experiences with you. That's what a speaker does. Shares their experiences with you and tries to convey a message that of hope and love and inspiration. And try to give you that audience. Try to give people the books you write. I didn't just write it because I wanted to write a book. I knew Joshua's life could inspire, and so that's why why you do it. And I appreciate your mentorship and both of you guys. I see what you've done with Long Island Prep, Paul, and I, man, to have that effect on families and kids and schools. It's important stuff. It's important stuff. So
absolutely. And I think that's why the three of us make a really great team. I mean, Steve's here kind of he's the straw that stirs the drink in so many ways, but he's so much more than that to me. And I know he is to you. So that's why I think the three of us really have something great going here. You know that?
Well, this book that's coming forth from his, the majority, I'm sure, is going to be his story times. How many stories do you have, Steve, to share? Inspirational. So that's going to be pretty cool to sit down and read.
Well,
and
that's a good point. And I think for me, and one of the things that you can't take lightly is when I was at Omnicom Group, and every day you're waking up and you're working with Derek Jeter and Mariano Rivera and Coach Knight and the best of the best. And even with Marty earlier, they have this extra gear or extra drive. And the one question I'm always asked if I'm at dinner or here and there, what kind of guy is Marty? What kind of guy is Jeter? What kind of guy is? So if someone asked me what kind of guy is Paul Frase, I got to say my wife was doing this bingo tournament in the middle of nowhere, Port St. Lucie, trying to raise some money for, the Humane Society. And who gets in a car and drives 4 hours and comes there to play bingo is Paul Frase. And, that's the kind of guy. And it's where are your friendships and who could you count on?
Yeah.
And it's very, very hard in this day and age, for people to stay in touch. It's a major problem of just staying in touch with your Rolodex and,
right.
Your relationships. And you and I have somehow, some way, stayed in touch for 35 years. And I am so happy about that, and so appreciative. And I guess the word is grateful that here we are, and I've got a podcast and you're on it and a book and, and all that good stuff. So, and I really, the sharing, and I know what you're sharing is ultra personal and you're sharing it with that audience. And that means a ton. And thank you for really giving me the idea for my next book, which is going to be called Story Time. And it's kind of going to be part of the, as well as the podcast. So I'll go back to Paul at this point.
So as we kind of wind it down here, guys, let's talk about what we have coming down the pipeline here. Paul, you're going to be one of our marquee speakers in 5-Star Speakers Bureau. I wanted to kind of get a sense of, how you feeling about that. You have so much to offer so many, as Steve was saying, your story is one of hope and resilience and, perseverance. I've always said that. I've always admired that about you. And I can't wait to see you in action. We had you on stage during the Night of Inspiration up here at Mulcahy's, for our Mental Health Matters Fair. But, you're going to be front and center when it comes to this thing. And that's for a reason. So tell us a little bit about it.
I think the fact that you have opportunities to share in other people's dreams, because people just don't have you come to speak to, there's a reason they hire you to come to speak, to share your story. And when I had the opportunity to come and join you at the Night of Inspiration, man, I got more inspired than I did inspiring. I guarantee. I mean, the two young ladies. First of all, Paul, you're a stud with speaking, and I knew Stephen, knock it out of the park. But those two ladies,
Brooke and Jamie De Palma, they were great.
The experiences that they've shared and they have. Oh my gosh! And then everybody you had there was bring a tear and bring some joy and laughter and just have an effect, a positive effect on those, that are around them. And then that's Joshua. Joshua had, if you had the opportunity to meet him and kneel down with him and talk with him, you can't imagine how many people, kids that knew Joshua and teachers that said, I learned more from Joshua than I ever taught him.
Wow.
All of these teachers.
Wow.
I mean, and it was pretty amazing. So it's a gift to somebody that speaks to impart some inspiration, but it's more of a gift that I receive every time I get around a group, and because it's always for a cause.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if it's for a corporate cause I'm not a business coach or anything like that. So I'm not going to be, speaking and telling you how to make your bottom line, raise your bottom line and, make your sales team that's not profitable. That's not me. But there's plenty of people out there that can inspire in that manner. And I think we all have an audience. We all have a story to tell, and we need to share it.
I love it. And Paul, we're really looking forward to it, having you part of all of what we're doing. So thank you so much. I just want to say one thank you from me. I'm going to throw it back to Steve. If you got one more for our friend Paul here.
Yeah, one last thing. By you not coming in studio today, you were missing lunch at Vincent's.
Oh,
So that is one real kick in the teeth.
the big clams,
Yeah, I know we're dealing with the highs and lows, but that's got to be a low point to end the podcast on.
That's terrible. Paul, are you going to get that dessert that you got the last time?
So no, I actually cannot make it to Vincent's this afternoon. I wish I could. Steve actually took us there a couple of weeks ago. And man, what a phenomenal experience it's been going to Vincent's.
Absolutely.
You know, but
all right, so let's hold it here, and we got plenty of love for you in the room, and we will have you back sooner than later.
Lots of big things coming down, Paulie.
You guys are great. I appreciate it, and go team.
All right. Thank you so much. That's Paul Frase. Let's just mention our last sponsor here. Today's Storytime podcast is also brought to you by Pioneer Sports, who want you to stop doing it yourself. They help schools, businesses, and municipalities start, run, and grow a successful sports program. You can give my buddy Tom Falcone a shout and learn more about Pioneer Sports. Just go to playpioneersports.com. Mr. Costello, Mr. Frase, gentlemen, thank you so very much. That's a wrap for today. And of course, thank you to our listeners for tuning in to the Storytime podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation and found it insightful and as inspiring as we did. Your support means the world to us, and we're grateful for each and every one of you. We want to thank Tony Walker and the Governor's Comedy Club podcast studio. If you haven't done so already, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a review. Let us know what you think. And don't forget to follow us on social media for all the latest updates and behind the scenes content. Go to thestorytimepodcast.com. For more information. We look forward to having you again with us next time. Until then, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep sharing your story.